So today we're going to be learning about how to construct a story. Or rather, I'm going to be teaching how to construct a story. First, for our first exercise, I want you to think of stories that you love. Not just any stories, but ones that you love. Ones that had you on pins and needles. Ones that you could never get enough of. They can be from any medium. Now ask yourself some questions. What genres are they? What characters did you relate to? What are their settings? What are their tones? What lessons did you learn? I'll give you a moment to think, like 20 seconds. Pause it if you need more time. Let's say you like high fantasy and adventure, like Lord of the Rings, The Dragon Prince, or Merlin. And let's say in Merlin you really like the quirky friendships and character interactions. And in The Dragon Prince you really enjoy the dragon designs. And in The Lord of the Rings you like the epic fantasy journey and the different characters that are in it. All of these are inspirations for your masterpiece. For you, it might be a different series of movies, it might be a different genre, it might be an entirely different tone at all. But all of these are things that you can take inspiration from. It's important to remember that storytelling does not have to be clever or extremely new. That is, it's okay to take elements or take inspiration from elements of other stories. That's not to say just copy and paste, but essentially it's okay to remember or make stories with things that you liked from other stories. Because putting that all together really does truly make a new story. For example, in all of the stories that I've chosen, all of them feature a mage, a king, elves, and magic. Nevertheless, their stories are unique, their characters are new, and their lore and settings are different. Ultimately, what keeps a reader interested is not constant subversions of tropes or entirely new worlds, but good writing. The ability to make characters intriguing and world building dramatic, but familiar, even after the newness of the world and the lore has worn off. So let's do that. Do this with the stories you've chosen as well. We're going to make a story here. We're going to construct a basic story. My examples might seem a little bit complex, but that's just because I tend to write a lot. As you'll see with one of the examples we have here, it's completely okay if your story is like simple 1, 2, 3. It's all good. Every story is good as long as you have good writing. So let's start with the basic elements of a story. Let's talk about our setting. I know that I want high fantasy. So I'm going to start with a magical realm of monsters and humans. I'll call it the Windbark Bog. For you, you might want to write a story that's YA and have it where the characters are in high school, or maybe you want to have a gritty sci-fi adventure and your story takes place on a spaceship. All of those are good places to start. Now, let's talk about point of view. There are a couple of different options here, but the real question is how many characters you want to handle and how hard you want your writing experience to be, especially if you're a beginner. First person is the easiest one to write. It's how we tell stories anyway. That's using words like I, me, we, us. That's telling stories from the first person. Second person is alright, but your reader might get frustrated, especially if they feel like that's not something they would do in real life. That's when you use you or your in your stories, those kinds of pronouns. Third person is a bit harder but versatile. That's the option with the most characters. So this is where you would be covering, say if you're doing third person omniscient, you'd be going over every character's thoughts and every character's actions. That's very versatile. You can tell your readers a whole lot more. But at the same time, that is a lot of characters to handle. We'll stick with first person. Let's talk about our characters. Let's say you really liked Aragorn from Lord of the Rings and Gawain from Merlin, and you want a female protagonist. So, our character would be a fighter with a lot of charm who enjoys revelry and adventure, but can be serious when she needs to be. Since we're in a kingdom, let's make her a princess and heir to the throne. We'll call her Xandria. So do the same thing with your character. Characters that you really liked or enjoyed or that you want to emulate, take those characters and see how you can mix them up. Hodgepodge them, Frankenstein them, if you will, and come up with your own character. Theme. Theme can be essentially anything you want. Maybe you want to go Greek mythology and punish your hero for her hubris, or maybe you want to have her learn what it takes to be a leader. For this example, we'll go with the latter. For your own story, you can basically make your theme anything. Anything that you believe in, any adage that you believe in, you can make that your theme. Now, plot. This is where it gets a bit more complicated. Plot Part 1. So far we know that Zandria is a princess of Windbark Bog, a magical realm of monsters and humans. She tends towards fun and adventure, but we want her to learn what it takes to be a leader. These are the basics of the story, but we need more. There are a couple of different ways to approach this from here, like the hero's journey, story arcs, webs, outlines, or freestyling. For the sake of speed, we're going to do a mixture of these, and to understand that, we need to know what a basic plot is. Plot Part 2. A basic plot consists of an exposition, or an introduction to our characters, a conflict which leads to the rising action, or the part of the story where tension is building and the stakes get more dire. The climax, or the breaking point of all the tension that's been building up. The falling action, or the part where things are beginning to settle down and the conflict is being resolved. And finally, the resolution, or the ending of the story. All has been resolved and the world returns to peace, even if it's changed. You can see this on the diagram that I took from Master Class. I have the link right at the top if you want to go there. I also use one from Grant Community High School, that was earlier. That shows you the exposition, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and the resolution. Okay, plot part 3, I'm pretty sure. A basic plot gives you a structure, but it's missing an important part, a drive. In order to move along this outline, you need inciting events, conflict, motivations, and most importantly, a character or characters at the center of it all. We need a character with wants and needs and flaws who has a motivation. We need an antagonist who contrasts with the hero, whose motivations are in direct competition with your characters. And lastly, we need a world that feels real and has its own complexities. Let's look at an example. This is a very simple example. It's one of my earlier works. You'll probably notice that it's quite simple. It does have copyrighted music, however, so we're just gonna mute during those times.
Starring Mia Kitty the student. In a small city, on a small island, in a small house, in a small... The essay is due in 2 days? Even at the 11th hour. I haven't gotten anything written. I don't even know what to write. Yes, the student's worst nightmare. Meanwhile...
Just imagine there's like blaring music here.
Fix this. A few minutes later... Hey, little sis, can you lower your music so I can finish my essay? Sure, sis. The next day... Phew, I finished it and early to boot. 2 weeks later. Well, I got my grade back. And I got an A. I'm actually really glad I didn't get mad, sis. Cool, sis. The end.
Okay. Unfortunately, it does not resonate as well without the music, but I hope that you still were able to catch some of those elements that we were talking about earlier in the lesson.
Keep your cool.
So let's go over the different elements of the story and see if you were able to correctly match them up with what just happened in this example that we just had. So, our setting is a home on an island. We have a first person point of view through Mia Kitty. Our characters are Mia and her sister. Our theme is that success requires calm. Our plot is as follows. Mia wants to finish her essay, but her sister, the antagonist, wants to play music. This is our exposition and rising action. Mia's anger builds to a climax. Through this, she learns to calm down, that she needs to calm down. This is followed by the following action, where she asks her sister to turn down the music and finishes her essay. Finally, the resolution is when she gets her grade back and speaks with her sister. So let's work out a plot for our own stories. Follow along with your own idea as we do this exercise. So Zandria is carefree, but her position as heir apparent means she'll have to become more responsible. She wants to stay an adventurer, but she needs to focus on her people. A villain could be someone who has a contrasting goal, like vying to be queen, maybe a younger sister, an aunt, or a council member. Or the villain could be someone who is opposite her personality, serious and strategic. Either of these options would force our hero to face that she cannot be carefree all the time, and that she must become a leader for her people. Otherwise, there may be harmful consequences. To build on that, let's look at our world. So, for this part, we might be thinking, okay, I have a character, but for this part we need to think of what contrasts with that character. What would force the character to follow the theme? What is the catalyst that needs to happen for them to go ahead and convey your theme? In this case, we want her to be a leader, so we have to have someone who forces her to confront the irresponsible or immature parts of her person, her flaws, so that she can grow and develop and correct those. You'll want to do the same thing with your character with the flaws and the theme and your villain. So, back to our world. Windbark Bog has both mountain monsters and humans. Maybe there is conflict on sharing space between the two of them, or maybe there's an evil mage that divides humans and monsters, or maybe there is something polluting the magic of their world. Let's go with that one. All together now. Now that we have all the elements of a basic story, let's put it all together with some creative changes. Remember that you don't need something very detailed or highly complex. A simple story like the one we saw as an example is great too. Here's my plot summary for the story of Zandria. I do admit I may have spent a little bit too long on this plot summary, but this is the essentials. Zandria is the princess of Windbark Bog, a mystical land where both humans and monsters live. She enjoys traveling through the woods with its fae and relaxing in hot springs with the dwarves and Vulcan spirits. But when her mother, the former queen, becomes sick and her aunt, a corrupt countess, is aiming for the throne, her fun lifestyle seems to be coming to an end. Even worse, the magic of Windbark Bog has been slowly degrading, and no one knows why. That is, until the appearance of Angelic, an ominous being with no known origin, destroys a large part of the capital city with destructive anti-magic. During this time, Zandria was traveling the high seas on a fishing expedition. When she returns, in the face of threats inside and outside of the castle, Zandria makes the choice to rush her coronation and inherit the magical sword, Ouroboros, to keep Windbark safe. Nevertheless, her people are dissatisfied, feeling that lacking a person in power made Windbark weak. They question whether Xandria is really up for the job. As Xandria settles into her new role as queen and begins to make reforms for the people, Andralik's region grows. Fearing the worst, Xandria battles with Andralik many times, but most of those times she loses, just barely keeping Windbark's towns. As a result, popular support begins to turn towards the Countess. At the climax, there is a battle at the capital once again, and Xandria battles Andralik and the Countess. It is revealed here that Andralik and the Countess are one and the same, and that the Countess was the one who poisoned the former queen. This time, Xandria wins, gaining freedom for Windbark Bog and the support of her people. So, with the last few minutes of this, try to do a similar thing or a similar paragraph, including your exposition, your arising action, your climax, your falling action, and your resolution, just like this one has. But trust me, it does not have to be this complicated or have twists and turns and everything like that. Everything can be, it is up to you what you want to do with your story. Okay. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful.